Voice of sharing, Durian ASEAN.
ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hello and welcome to Durian ASEAN. You're with Gowri today, and it's a Tuesday morning, and I'm here to give you all the news from Southeast Asia on our ASEAN Daily, which takes place every day from Monday to Friday. And to start off today, we have a news about Najib ordering agencies to channel aid to Sarawak. And this is of course due to the recent floods that take place because of the unceasing rain downpour over the last few days. Sarawak has been hit by a very bad flood, and our Prime Minister has stepped in to say that he will be ordering all the agencies to head over to Sarawak and to provide aid to them and to help them in whatever way possible, especially in terms of providing medical supplies and other emergency kits that they need, and also arrange for evacuation. It seems that the number of evacuees actually rose to about 3,458 as of yesterday afternoon, from just 3,201 in the morning. And the floods in Sarawak, especially in Kuching, Samarahan, Muka, and Limbang divisions, have also reportedly worsened. But he said he will continue to monitor the situation and to see how it goes. But as of now, he will do his part, and the best that he can do for now is to send all the relevant parties over to help them. And moving on to Cambodia, we have PM Hun Sen, who is urging the prosecution of opposition lawmakers. And and there are 7 politicians who were arrested, along with several other CNRP members, following July 15 clashes at a demonstration against the closure of the Phnom Penh's main designated protest site. And at least 40 people, who were mostly security guards employed by the local authorities, were injured during the clashes. And the lawmakers, who include the prominent MU Sochua, were charged with leading an insurrection movement, masterminding violence, and inciting criminal acts. And this charge alone can carry a prison sentence between 20 to 30 years. And a lot of right groups have come up, and they showed up, and they are not happy about these charges, and they said this could just be an attempt by the ruling Cambodian People's Party to prod the opposition into ending its boycott. And he's also Prime Minister Hun Sen has also been accused by the rights group of stifling the opposition and stamping out dissent and ignoring human rights abuses. And it seems Cambodia's Prime Minister does not have a very good reputation when it comes to providing certain basic rights that his citizens deserve, and starting with human rights, which they do not have a good track record on, and also in terms of giving the opposition enough power to be there and to question the current government and stamping out dissent. He has not been providing that much of freedom within the country itself for people to voice out their opinion if they're not happy with his administration. And the CNRP also boycotted the parliament for nearly a year after elections in July 13, accusing the ruling party of stealing victory through widespread vote rigging. And it seems that he also claimed this people are charged by this insurrection, which could put them in jail for up to 30 years, and they will not be spared from the prosecution. That is it seems like a very, very harsh penalty for the opposition members. And the politicians who have not actually been sworn in as MPs at that time were arrested after a violent protest last July. And this is also thought to have spurred the opposition Cambodia National Rescue Party to end its year-long boycott of the parliament. So we will take a short break. When we return, we'll continue with the ASEAN Daily.
ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hello and welcome back to our ASEAN Daily at ASEAN.com, the voice of discovery and sharing. And you're with me, Gowri, for today, our Tuesday morning ASEAN Daily. And I'm bringing you news from all over Southeast Asia as always. And let's move on to Myanmar now. And we have a special story on Wiratu calling UN envoy a whore. And for those of you who don't know Wiratu, he is actually a Burmese Buddhist monk who is also the spiritual leader of the anti-Muslim movement in Burma. And over the past, he has been accused of inspiring a lot of persecution against Muslims. And although most of the time he claims to be nothing more than just a peaceful preacher, he on many occasions apparently he has been caught referring to Muslims as the enemy, and he was also described in The Economist as a notorious chauvinist for whom Buddhist equates with a narrow nationalism. And his opposition to Islam started quite some time ago, and he's been on a lot of prominent magazines, but mostly not for the right reasons. And he said referring to the Muslim violence and domination in neighboring countries, he worries about a similar fate for Burma, that they will actually rise and dominate the country and take over as the country leaders, and so much so that he's so extreme that people have actually called him Burmese Bin Laden. And he said abort violence, and he opposes terrorism as well, but he has also expressed admiration for and desire to follow the example of the English Defence League. So back to our story, he actually referred to the UN convoy as a whore because he said they did not actually properly study the race protection law that they already have in Myanmar or in Burma, and instead they just keep coming into the country and complaining about the state of human rights in Burma itself. And he actually said that in front of hundreds of supporters last Friday afternoon. And apart from that, he also said, if you are so willing, may so you offer your arms to the color, which is a very racist term meaning blacks, but you will never sell our Arakan state. And as of now, the UN has not responded to anything that he said. And he also went on to say that don't assume that you are a respectable person just because you have a position in the UN. In our country, you're nothing more than just a whore. And also on Friday morning itself, they had a group of about 500 monks, mostly led by Wiratu and Parmauka, who is another hardliner in this case. And some of the marchers were members of the Arakan National Network, which he condemned the UN's call for Burma to grant citizenship to the members of the Rohingya community who were born in the country. And it seems that he's not too happy about the fact that that Myanmar is actually trying to provide citizenship to this Rohingya community who have long been marginalized, and they have been trying to be a citizen of Myanmar and trying to also get their rights in the country. And he said that fundamental rights are not hierarchical, and they aren't conditional upon one another, and they are inalienable. And in December, the UN General Assembly also approved a non-binding resolution drafted by the European Union that called Naypyidaw to actually extend citizenship rights to these Rohingya and remove mobility restrictions placed on them. And as Myanmar is responding to this and saying that they might consider it, and we have another party coming up and saying that no, we don't actually want this to happen because this state belongs to us. And let's move on to Philippines, where we have tighter rules in regards to hiring maids in the country. And these tighter regulations in Philippines may soon make hiring foreign maids from Indonesia and the Philippines a more costly affair. And the Philippine government is actually looking to introduce a quota on foreign maids in Singapore, which could see a supply of maids here dropping by as much as 20%. And both countries, actually Indonesia and Philippines, have raised the minimum monthly salaries, which is very interesting because for the Indonesians maid, they have increased the price to about 1,340 ringgit from the previous just 1,200 ringgit. And currently there's no quota on the Filipino domestic workers who come to Singapore, but the industry players estimate that 1,000 Filipino maids may arrive here each month, and the plan is of course to bring down the number of Filipino domestic workers, not just in Malaysia but in Singapore as well. And similarly, the Indonesian embassy has also introduced changes to the salaries of Indonesian maids, and the embassy has announced in a letter to Singapore maid agents that from last September, Indonesian maids must be paid at least 500 Sing dollars a month. And the Indonesian domestic workers have been briefed in training centers that they should be paid a minimum of 500 a month, and they will complain. They're encouraged to complain if they are paid less. And the Indonesian embassy counselor Sukmo Yuwono will stop the agents from recruiting the maids. And also a drop in the supply of domestic workers will in turn drive up the fees that Singapore employers can pay, because the demand for maids is still very high, which is very true. In Malaysia, we definitely depend a lot, very heavily on foreign workers, especially ones from Indonesia, from Myanmar, from Bangladesh, from Philippines. And this will definitely cause an uproar among all the current employers that already have maids from Indonesia and Philippines. But much will also depend on how strictly the foreign governments enforce these new laws, which is a very good point, because if there is no one to really follow up with all these rules and regulations, it's very easy for the employers to just brush off this new rule as ridiculous and still pay the maids what they've always been paying. So we will take another short break. When we come back, more news from our daily ASEAN news.
ASEAN Dailies, first and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
You are back again. This is Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
And you are listening to our ASEAN Dailies, where we bring you more news from Southeast Asia and all over the world. And to continue our news, we want to report something that happened in China. Actually, it's more like happening between the borders of Vietnam and China. So apparently, Chinese policemen shoot two Uyghurs or Uyghur trying to enter Vietnam. The situation between the Chinese government and the Uyghur minority is getting worse and worse. Seems like they are treating them like criminals.
There's been a lot of attacks in the past as well, but the Chinese government said that they got it covered and it will not happen again. But it did happen again, where they actually shot two more Uyghurs. And they have also blamed recent terror attacks which happened at the borders on these Uyghur separatists.
Especially with the influx of terror attacks in Europe, the most infamous one would be the Charlie Hebdo killings. But at the same time, to equate the terror attacks done of, in this case, I would say separatist movement by Uyghurs with the kind of religious-based terror attacks in Europe might not be the same kind. I mean, at least in my personal opinion, might not be the same kind of, I would say, situation, because in the situation of between the Uyghur separatist groups as well as the Chinese government, this has been ongoing since probably forever. This is something that has got into conflict between the Uyghur Xinjiang and the police in many occasions, and most of the occasion always ended up with violently resisted arrests by the Uyghur separatist groups. I think their end goal is not so much on religion, but more so much about wanting self-determination of their own state or their own livelihood.
Actually, it kind of reminds me of the Rohingyas in Myanmar, because these Uyghurs are also Muslim, and it's part of their identity and who they are, and even their language is actually kind of related to the Turkish language, and they are close to all the Central Asian nations, and they have been placing themselves at the borders of this province in China, and they've been trying to make their livelihood, but it seems that the Chinese are not too happy about that, about having this certain ethnic population actually kind of not dominating their own borders.
They are actually culturally and ethnically different. If people ask, like, who the hell is the Uyghurs, they are closely resembled with their neighbors in the Central Asia. They look distinctly Central Asian. In fact, they are ethnically Turkic Muslims, making out 45% of the region's population. 40% are Han Chinese though. And Chinese re-established control in 1949, right after the World War II, after crushing short-lived state of East Turkestan. Who knows there's such thing, right? Since then, there have been large-scale immigration of Han Chinese, and because of that, the Uyghurs fear of erosion towards their own traditional culture, their own identity. So I would say the kind of quote-unquote terrorism that is happening in Xinjiang is not so much about wanting to go against the government, but wanting to preserve their identity, which is, like you say, similar to what is happening with the Rohingya. I mean, to some extent with the Tibetans and many more, and even to some extent with the Acehnese when they were trying to seek for self-determination with Indonesia a couple of years back. So that's what's happening between the Chinese border and the Vietnam border. Sadly, the two Uyghurs were being gunned down. Anyway, on the other hand, talking about Vietnam, they are definitely focusing more on creating more economic opportunity in the country. So seems like there is a friendly cooperation going underway for fundamental interests between Vietnam and China. This is said by the ambassador Nguyen Van Tho. So friendly cooperations between both countries is the fundamental interest of these two different groups of nations. And he said that, the ambassador Nguyen said that the articles which was published on China's People's Daily on January 17 on the occasion of the 65th anniversary of the two-country diplomatic ties. I'm just it's such an irony actually, because who knows, relationship between China and Vietnam used to be quite close. In fact, during the period of Mao Zedong, during the period of Vietnam War, it was actually one of the closest relationship among between China and its South China Sea counterparts. But nowadays, it's totally a different story, especially with the South China Sea disputes. I think relationship or amending relationship between or invigorating relationship between China and Vietnam might be a bit of a problematic situation there.
And you are right about that, because the Vietnam-China relationship has its ups and downs. It used to be really good back then they had some conflicts, especially now with the South China Sea conflict coming in. But Vietnam is very positive that it will treasure this comprehensive strategic cooperative partnership with China, and they are looking at this as actually a long-term strategy in terms of their priority.
And this is their strategy, don't laugh, huh? Good neighbors, good friends, good comrades, and good partners.
That sounds good. Sounds very positive.
I like the reputation of the word good. It sounds like they are trying their best.
It's like a psychological manipulation on China.
That's true. And it also sounds like an old couple that is trying to mend things up. So they just make up things so that they are able to live with each other, no matter how much hateful they are with each other. Anyway, the two sides have set up dozens of cooperation mechanism at all levels and all sectors, which is great in a way, because Vietnam need that boost of economic development. As we all know, the two-way trade estimated to amount at $58.5 in 2014. Which will benefit not just Vietnam but the last chunk of Southeast Asia as well. So there will be transfers of culture, education, scientific technology, tourism cooperation and all that, blah blah blah. So I hope that this is just not all talk but real cooperations. And I guess at the end of the day, dollars and cents count in this particular issue. Vietnam definitely need China more than the Chinese need Vietnam, I suppose.
Yeah, it seems 2015 is also very meaningful to them, because it marks the 65th anniversary of their diplomatic ties. So you are right about the old couple thing. Because they are marking their 65th anniversary.
Yeah, it's like
actually.
old couple have been fighting all day, but they still want to be with each other because they have to be with each other.
Because they have their own
differences
and benefits that they want from each party.
Sounds like friends with benefit, right? Just kidding. Just kidding. Anyway, moving on to ASEAN trade. Just now we talk about economy. So, just to continue the same area, ASEAN trade exhibition industry are seeing growth at 10% a year. That's a lot, man. This is said by Xinc. He said that the upcoming new Trade venue, which is the Malaysian International Trade and Exhibition Centre, is a positive development, and this will definitely benefit from the ASEAN Economic Community Initiative. So this guy, Xing, is actually from the UBM Asia. Although he cautioned that Malaysia is losing out to neighboring host countries and is which in turn they are attracting more big international events due to the lack of sufficient exhibition floor space. I guess in other words, our building are not big enough.
But he also said that this lack of space actually limited the potential growth of Malaysia's exhibition industry, pointing out that the country's total exhibition space was about 90,000 square meters. Who knows that the exhibition space can also contribute to the...
So, Gowri, I just want to let you know, size matters.
Okay, it does apparently.
Yeah, size do matter in this case because if not, all the attractive trade investment will not go to Malaysia. In fact, it will go to some other and more attractive neighboring countries where they can offer bigger space, bigger venue, and more attractive benefits for investors and entrepreneurs as well. Anyway, he added that he see strong growth potential for Malaysia for the sector of water, energy and security, in addition to UBM's plan to strengthen the furniture sector by drawing more international visitors. Wow, so it's more than just IKEA.
And
like that.
Some of the biggest trade show that Malaysia has hosted over the years is the Malaysian International Furniture Fair, the Matrade Exhibition and Convention Center, which is also very big. It's about 7,000 square meters, as well as the Putra World Trade Center. So these are the popular venues when it comes to corporations seeking exhibition space.
So Gowri, do you want to buy that cabinet? You know where to go?
Yeah, I'll go to that store like behind my house.
Okay, we'll take a short break. When we return, we will have our last segment of our ASEAN Dailies.
ASEAN Dailies. First and foremost news from Southeast Asia.
Hey, you're back again with Arlene.
Hi, this is Gowri.
Yes, and we are going to talk about money.
Money.
Not any money, but this is actually a survey done by Oxfam. Apparently, the richest 1% will be owning more, or is already owning more than the rest of the world. In fact, to put it in percentage, according to Oxfam, the wealthiest 1% will be owning more than 50% of the wealth of the world by 2016. Can you imagine that? That's crazy.
It does sound crazy, and the Oxfam's executive director Winnie Bianima, who will co-chair the Davos event, said she would use the charity's high-profile role at the forum to demand urgent action to narrow the gap between the rich and the poor.
Just a bit of statistic by the Oxfam. What they have done is, apparently in terms of global wealth, 48% is currently owned by the richest 1% this year, and 54% is owned by the richest 1%, estimated by 2020. So our Wawasan 2020 or Vision 2020 will be more like Vision who's the richest 54%. And just a bit of numbers here. 1.9 trillion US dollar wealth of 80 top billionaires equal to bottom 50% of the rest of the world, while 600 billion US dollar increase in wealth for 80 top billionaires in 4 years, or 50% rise, and 750 billion US dollar drop in wealth for the poorest 50% of the world in 4 years. That's how crazy the dollars and cents are.
And it seems that they are saying that it's time for our leaders take on a more powerful vested interest that stand in the way of a fairer and more prosperous world. And they are of course urging for all these people to give back to society so they can narrow the gap between the rich and the poor. But then again, if you think about it, is that really the solution to just give out your wealth to people who are not so privileged?
Well, actually, they are really, really rich people that are giving out their wealth. For example, Warren Buffett Prince Al-Walid as well as George Soros. But the reality is like this. It's not so much about how much money that you're giving out from your pocket. It's about why the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer even though the productivity is on the increase, which is absurd. So I think the main problem is not so much about how much money people are making, but why the structure is not distributing fairly to in relation to the productivity of workers. I just give example of Malaysia. Actually, if you look through the decades, Malaysian workers have been increased in productivity. I mean, we all know the feeling of working long hours and not getting OT, and the labor law in Malaysia is so weak that workers don't even know their rights as a worker. Wage has been in stagnant for years and years, actually for decades. So in a way, it's more of a structural reform that governments all over the world need to address, because with globalization, especially in the context of Southeast Asia, AEC, it will only strengthen the wealth of the richest, because they are able to put their money not just in their own country but all over the world and all over the region. And with the weak laws and weak structural reforms, especially in terms of wage, it will only weaken the poorest and even the middle class.
Mm-hmm.
So in a sense, I guess to conclude, the issue related to wealth inequality is important for us to somehow look at the bigger picture here. So Gowri, you're speechless.
I guess that wraps up our ASEAN Daily for this morning. And of course, don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel. And also download our TuneIn app to listen to us.
Thank you very much, and stay tuned again for the next show, which is at 9 o'clock for our Durian Heat.